What is up, everybody? This is Bulls and Boards. Join us as we do a quick how to play of Sonora, the world's first flick and write.
How to play Sonora by Pandasaurus. So this is a flick and write. This section here is where you're going to be flicking.
A flick and write?
Yes.
Okay, that's new.
Yeah, so not roll. There's no dice. There's no cards. There's disc that you flick.
Oh, wow.
More gracefully than that, hopefully. We're going to discuss the flicking board, I guess is what you would call it. And then we will discuss the scoring board afterwards. You'll notice that there are animals on it. I will be referring to the animals in this board as well as we go. So,
and these fun little discs.
And these fun little discs that have action points on them between 1 and 5.
So if you want to flick these,
yes.
I double dog dare you to try.
Yeah.
If anybody gets the reference, please comment below.
So the board is set up into 4 quadrants. I'm going to discuss the quadrants and then the flicking afterwards. The first one is the cliff dwellers or the lizard section. It is always in front of the first person or the first player, which you get a little first player token.
Cliff dwellers?
Cliff dwellers, which is represented by the lizards because...
Oh, yeah. See a little lizard there in the corner.
This section here is the next section. It is the canyon section represented by a fox.
Appropriate.
Yep. This section over here is the creek bed, which is represented by an owl. I thought it kind of looked like a tree, but it's water is going through a creek bed.
Oh, I see it now, yeah. I thought it was a tree as well.
Yeah, which wouldn't make sense in the desert. And then closest over here, or furthest from me, is the mud cracks.
Oh, the purple mud.
Purple mud cracks, yes, which is represented by the rabbit. So, on your turn, you are going to flick 2 of your disc. So it'll go 2, 2, and then 1 because there are 5 discs. Which number you flick is entirely up to you. So you don't have to do them one in numerical order. You can do them in any order you want.
So what's the purpose of the numbers then? The
purpose of the numbers is to determine how many action points you have on the score sheet when we get to the score sheet.
Oh, okay.
So it's very simple. You flick your disc in, and where it lands determines where your action is.
All right.
Now,
can you flick anywhere?
You can. Well, yes and no. In the base game, you can flick anywhere. There is an advanced rules that you cannot flick to the section in front of you.
All right. So you have to at least clear the first square.
Right. So you can't just sit here and load up all of your action spot points in one section.
Yeah, that would be kind of a little broken.
Yes, you can. Let's see if I can do it. Boom!
Ooh.
Ricochet yourself into that section.
Okay. Let me try something. Oh, okay.
And you can do it that way. If the disc ever lands upside down or on its side, which I guess could happen.
You can read minds.
If
anybody gets that reference, comment below.
Because I don't. It is a valid flick, and you just flip it to the correct orientation. If you ever flick it, and I'm not going to try, and it flicks out of this play area on the board, that disc is then removed from that turn. Yes, thank you. And you don't get it. Now, you do have the opportunity to reflick, and I'll explain that when I go over the scoring board, or you can spend a reflick to take it and try again.
Oh, okay. So we just... Now, what's this spot here in the middle with the
spot here in the middle?
Kind of little depression there.
Ever get yours in the middle, whether you flick it there or somebody ricochets it into that spot, this is then a wild.
Oh.
You immediately take that disc out so that spot is available, and you place it on one of the 4 spots on your board, on your scoreboard, so that you can score that up with that disc.
So basically, it just acts as if you landed in any one of the
quadrants.
Correct.
It's a wild spot.
So it kind of reminds me of that game that I can never pronounce with the Chronicle or what. So you just, ideally, you want to just shoot them as far as you can,
well,
I
into
guess
the
based
section.
on the board here,
Correct.
you would have to. So let me get mine out there just to see.
Well, you like to flick them upside down.
Yep. All right. Oh,
It-
so that wouldn't be.
Correct.
That wouldn't count in the advanced
In
rules,
the advanced
so I would
rules,
have to
that
reflick it.
you would have to spend a reflick. Correct. Now, if you ever flick and it ends up on this between two, if it is a majority onto one, it counts for that section. If it is straight up in the middle,
Okay.
you, as the owner of that disc, decide which of the two you would like to use.
All right.
Now you'll see that we have 4 big spots and then 4. Where's the other one? Oh, there it is. 1, 2, 3, 4 little spots. These are bonus spots. If your disc is touching even the outside border of that bonus spot, you then do that bonus and not the area it in. So if I was like this, I would have this bonus in the rabbit section, which is the mud cracks, not the cliff dwellers, which is the lizard.
So you would score that down here in this little rabbit area.
Correct.
All right.
The rabbit and the lizard is 2 times, so this would become a 6.
Makes
The
sense.
fox and the owl, or the bird, is 2 of that placement. So I would get to do the 3 action twice.
In the fox area.
In the fox area
Right.
and the bird.
Okay.
So that's why it's split into 2.
So even
and
if
then
you
2
land in this quadrant here, you may not actually be getting the points for that section if you land on one of those bonuses.
Correct. If you
All right.
land on one of those bonuses. Like I said, you do flick 2, 2, and then 1.
And then each one of these numbers you said represents your total that you have to put towards your scoring.
Correct. Those are your action points.
Right. So then you would just move them over to their given areas.
Correct. So you have 2 things. You have your reflicks, which we've discussed. You can at any point reflick any one disc that you just say I flicked this one and I'm like, oh, that's not the area I wanted. Let me try it again. And I got
you
the
ended
same
up exactly in the same
area.
spot.
Yeah.
Well, deja vu.
That is a reflick. It has to be on the last disc you did. At the end of the turn.
Unless it's where it goes off the board.
Correct.
Okay.
If at the end of everybody flicking, you go, you know what? I really want more points in here. You can swap disc. And that is another thing you can earn on your scoreboard is a swap.
Well, so that's what all these little icons
Correct.
here are. Okay.
Those the reflick and the swaps.
All right, cool. All right. So I guess we should probably look at how we do scoring.
We are. So the first hold on. The first thing before we start scoring is the cliff dweller, the lizard section, as I'm just gonna call lizard section. You score that first.
Okay.
And the way this one scores is differently than the others. These 3 are done simultaneously. Everybody can work on their own scoring. This section, it's dependent on who has the most points in it.
Okay.
Whoops. So, say this was the setup after the flicking. Green player has 6 points. I have 3 points. So, the green player would score that section first.
All right.
And then the yellow player. And now we'll go
So
to...
there's an advantage for scoring it first.
Correct.
So how many rounds does this play through?
It is dependent on, you set that up at the beginning of the game. A short game is 5, a standard game is 6, and a long game is 7 turns.
Okay,
Correct.
so 7 turns.
Correct.
So back and forth till either 5, 6, or 7.
Correct.
And then...
And like I said, at the end of the round, if it's a 4 or 3 player game, you would turn it 90 degrees so that this section is in front of the first player. If you're 2 player like we are, where we're sitting across from each other, you'd flip the board 180 so that the first player then...
So the first player always would have the cliff dweller or the lizards in front of them.
Correct.
No matter how many people you're playing,
Correct.
you just rotate it.
Yep.
All right, sounds cool. So let's look at how we do some scoring.
Yes. Okay. So in the lizard section, like I was saying, the person who scores the most goes first, and then everybody else, or goes in order of who scored the most down to the least. If you're ever tied, starting with starting player and working around clockwise and so on and so on.
All right, so just based on the disc.
The points, correct.
Yeah.
So the reason this matters is because, as you can see, there are
Hexagons?
hexagons. It's A through H. They're labeled. On the bottom, you probably can't see it, but there's a tiny little number that tells you how many hexagons are actually in each spot. So when you fill...
Oh, that's what those numbers are.
Yeah, when you fill a section completely, the first person to fill it circles the top score. So they get a scoring advantage, plus they get a bonus, which is why it matters who
goes first.
Goes first. Everybody else will then get these bottom scores. So,
all right. So any number of people can get that 9 points.
Correct. So if you're playing a 4-player game, 3 people can get that 9 point. Only one would get the 11 point.
And I see they get that little
correct
reflick icon as well.
They do. They get the reflick icon. So what they would do is at the beginning of the game, one should already be circled. They would then get another one. So then they would have 2. Actually, that's the swap icon, not the reflick. The reflick is just the straight triangle.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
The swap is the 2 triangles. Swap 2.
So what is the little ones that have the X's on them already?
The little ones that have the X's on them are where you start each section. And then this section has a square. That is a horrible square. Let's try that again. And that is your starting location on each section.
But you don't have to start on the A for the lizard.
No, you do not have to start on the A for the lizard.
It just gives you one.
You don't even have to fill in all of one. So say you had your 5 points, you could do 2 here and 3 here if you wanted to. You could put 1 on 5 different ones. It does not matter. Those you can spend however you want.
Okay.
It's just the first person to gets the top one. Everybody else gets the bottom one. Now I'm going to talk about these little section here for a second. This is the discovery bonus. If you ever enclose or get the circle icon, and you'll see there's a circle icon here and here, you would then get to choose one of these 3 icons or actions.
All right.
So this would be 6 points to spend in the bunny section, which we will get to. 4 points in the fox section, and a 1 through 5 in the owl section. We're going to talk about the fox section next. So the fox section is over here. This would be the canyon.
So the top right section of the board?
Correct.
The canyon.
And here's why it's 2 of a number. Say this is what I scored in that section. You look down here on the bottom. Your 4 is this shape. Your 2 is this shape. If you had a bonus, you would do 2 of that section. So it gets all polynomial and...
yes, the polyominoes.
Yes, you get all Tetrisy. You start here. Your shapes have to be adjacent. They cannot be diagonal, so you could not go like this. It has to be diagonal.
So 2 squares have to touch each other completely.
Correct.
All right.
So with my 4, I could do this shape. And then my 2 is a
little
L.
Little L.
So I could do that if I wanted to, actually.
So what are the little cacti and the...
this. Like that.
Okay.
So as you enclose a cactus, you cross off the corresponding cactus in the row like this.
Your columns there?
In your columns.
And you covered up a bird too, so you said there was something about...
Correct. Let me explain the cactus and then I'll get to the bird.
Oh.
At the end of the game, wherever you're at on your cactus row, so say I was something like this, you score. So I would score 19 points for that cactus, 7 points for that cactus, and 10 points for that cactus. So you want to fill in as many as you can.
Okay.
Now, the bird. Here's where you can chain actions. This now immediately gets me 1 to 5 actions in the bird section.
Okay. Which we're going to go to here in a minute. So.
Yep, I'll explain it next. The bird
one more question on this, though. If you have the 4 and the 2, can you choose to make that a 5, or they have to be used individually?
No, they have to be used individually. You can downgrade those. So say you can't use this 4, but you could really use this 3.
Okay.
You could downgrade the 4 to the 3.
But you can't add them together
No, you
to
can't,
make a larger number.
You can't add them together to make a larger number.
Okay.
You will notice that there are square symbols, and you'll find them throughout all of the scoring sections. That is for the solo play, so you can ignore them.
Unless you're playing solo.
Unless you're playing solo, and then you don't want to ignore them, correct? You'll see that there are swaps, there are reflicks, and there are discovery bonuses that you can get as well. In
quite a few things there.
Correct.
As long as you've boned up on your Tetris.
Yes, as long as you've boned up on your Tetris. If you ever get a discovery bonus, like I said, these ones, you select the one you want. It can be used anytime during the game. You do not have to use it that turn.
Okay.
So discovery bonuses, you can rack them up and save them to your very last turn if you want.
As I say, might be good for like an end game.
Correct. Or if you're like, hey, I really need this before I do this, you can use them there. When you do enclose a animal or check off an animal in the other spots, those are immediate.
All right, so the circles, you just pick which bonus you want.
Correct.
And use it at your leisure. And the animals, you do those actions immediately.
Correct. So let's explain, since I crossed off a bird section, let's explain the bird section. So say this is what I scored in the bird section. I get to choose you can play them in any order. So the 5 or the 3, you have to go the exact amount. You cannot only go 4 spaces or 2 spaces. You have to go 5.
Unlike the Fox one, you
correct.
have to use the total number.
You have to use the total number. If you cannot, for any reason, you just simply forfeit that turn. That disc. The way this section works is, say I do the 5, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and you circle the last one as 5.
All right.
You cannot go 2 directions. So I could not do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that. You have to go in a straight line.
I see.
You can turn.
Right.
But you can't veer off.
Now, do you do the 3 separately from the 5, or can you add those together?
No, separate.
Okay, so all the discs are separate.
All the discs are separate.
Okay.
So this one counts as a 1 through 5. You can pick what number you want.
Okay, so if you enclose or earn a bird somewhere, it's
right.
1 through 5.
Correct. So I could do with that 1, 2. Now I have a fox, which are 4 points, which means I could then come over here.
And how do you know they're 4 points?
They have a little 4 in the tail.
Okay.
It's
a little tiny 4 in the tail.
A little tiny 4 in the tail, yes. But then you could do 4 points and chain. Well, let's chain another action. Let's do this. Now I have chained a 5 in the bunny. To remind myself, I'm going to just write a little 5 over here to remind myself I have that.
So you went from bird, or you went from fox over to bird, and now back to fox. So you could kind of just bounce back and forth and get a lot of bonuses.
And now I go back to owl because I still have my 3 I need to spend, which I can then do 1, 2, 3, and get me another 5 over here.
All right. But just to clarify, when you covered the bird here, you would have played it immediately. You wouldn't have waited till you were doing your disc.
You can. You can wait until you do your disc.
Oh, so you can choose to use that one whenever you feel like during your scoring?
During your scoring, yes.
Oh, okay.
During your scoring, yes, you can. So you
nice.
can write yourself, because these are nice little dry erase, you can write yourself a little 1 to 5.
So you could actually
remind you that, hey, I've got that score over here.
So you could actually score it out where you're trying to make chains before you go to another section.
Correct. Doing the rabbit section last is probably the best thing to do, because it is a total, where this is, you're using that specific action point number. This is a specific action point number. This is a total, and we'll get to that in 1 second.
Finally, we add up the disc.
Finally. Now, when it comes to scoring this section, and this is where it gets tricky, you could stop all your disc if you wanted to on another section. Or you circle a number. At the end of the game, you add up all the numbers you circled. So say the game ended here, I would only score 1 point for this section.
So whatever numbers you've circled is what you score at the end.
Correct. And as you can see, as you move further out on the branches, they get to 10. Or I guess the river.
Yes, that's right, because it's water, not a tree.
It's water. It's not a tree. It's water.
Even though it's the bird section.
Correct.
All right. This is not Wingspan.
No. So, this section over here. Let's see, the 1 is the only one I have.
So now this section, we're allowed to add up the disc.
Correct. So this is the rabbit section. As you can see.
So let's say you had the 4 and the 1. Let's just so we have
well, I have points.
Numbers to work with.
I have points I've done. So, say I only scored the 1. That way we're only using 1 disc in each one. But we could, yeah. Let's do it. Why not? So, I would have, from my flicking, I would have 5 points plus the additional 5, 10 that I scored initially. Or that I got from bouncing back and forth.
Through your bonuses.
Through my bonuses. To do this section, I would then have 15 points to spend. Each of these little circles have a number in them. You have to check off ones that are adjacent to where you're at. So I have 15 points. Let's see if I can do this. So I could do 3, and you draw a line. 7, 9, and then you notice I'm creating triangles. Oh, and I can then go, I'll go here. That's 12 points I just spent.
Okay, so you have 3 remaining.
I have 3 remaining. There are no more 3s. I could check this too, or I can use my remaining down here at the bottom.
Oh, that's what those are for.
And fill those in.
Mark off those.
I don't have to use them all in one. I can use them in any order I want. If I do fill a column, then I have 4 more points in this case to then spend over in the rabbit or the fox section, which then gets me
more chaining.
More chaining.
Okay, wow. So what was the point of doing triangles?
So triangles come to the end of the game scoring. So the triangles, you have little cacti or cactus or...
Sure.
There's purple ones, teal ones, and green ones that look like grass. Each one that you score or enclose in a triangle is a multiplier at the end. So I did 3 here, so it would be 2 times however many, 3, so that would be 6 points at the end of the game.
Now, granted, this is just one turn.
This is
Your
just
board
one
will have
turn.
a whole lot more going on.
Yes, by the end of the game, hopefully you've done something like this. Let's say...
Okay, all right, slow down, we get it.
Let's do more. Here. So then I would have 1, 2, 3, 4 here. I would have 2 of these tealy blue ones, which is 4. So 2 times 4 is again 8. And then I would have 2 of these. These are worth 6 points each. So that would be 12 points. Notice I enclosed an owl.
So you would have been able to use a bird. All right.
And I would have enclosed a discovery, which would have gotten me another one of these that I could spend at any time.
All right.
At the end of the game, you add up all your totals for all the sections and fill it in and do your math. And
so there's some math involved.
There is some math involved, and yeah, pull out your calculator, and whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins.
All right, so that was our how-to tutorial of the Flickin' Right game from Pandasaurus, Sonora.